And we're live.
Recording now. The red light is on.
Yeah, but actually we're not going to be live.
Are we just riffing?
Riffing? What does that mean?
No plan. Kind of going. Feeling the vibe. That kind of stuff.
The question I have for you
Okay.
is whenever you get in one of those conversations that you're no longer interested in, and let's say it's with somebody that you work with or maybe like a distant family member, maybe you're seeing them for the first time, y'all got things you're catching up on.
Yeah.
We've all been there, right? Where you get in that conversation and you find yourself like not even listening anymore. You're thinking to yourself like, Jesus, like I just want this conversation to end. And then they say something that prompts you to give them a good yeah or a head nod or yeah, no, I know. Exactly. Whatever those little like responses are. But how do you get at, do you have any ways that you get out of that conversation or do you just like write it out?
I don't know if there's like a way that you really can other than
I can't.
You kind of have to finagle your way out. You just find out like or look for something that around you that will cause your attention. Like, oh, somebody needs me. Or, oh, I got to help somebody with this real quick. Like, depending on if you're at work or if you're just in like a general setting or with your family. Yeah, I find myself in that situation a lot. Not so much with my friends, but really when it comes down to people that maybe I don't know that well, or it's just a topic that I just get bored with easily.
Yes.
And it's just, I don't have much to put in. So I don't want to, it's tiring to me to try to fake a conversation. I get worn out by it really quickly. So if I'm in a conversation with somebody and I kind of start feeling that way, yeah, I don't really, it's like a case by case basis. I'll try to find some kind of out, no matter what it is. And
it's hard though.
I've had situations where I've literally just like kind of just and then just turn away.
Yeah, when you're just out of options.
But you don't want to be an a-hole.
No, I don't. Like I'm literally incapable of like rudely leaving a conversation. You know what I mean? I really try hard to be considerate, and like also because I know where some people are coming from. Like I like to talk. Like I really think that I enjoy talking so much that we started a podcast because of it. Yeah. Like I do. And I know it's bad like around some of our friends and stuff. Like Macy and I, when we were in Minnesota, we went for a hike. And she was like, when you hike by yourself, do you just talk to yourself the whole time? And I was like, no, but like that's kind of how my brain works. It's constantly going. Like I'm constantly talking to myself because I probably talked to her for the first like 25 minutes.
Well, I know, like I picked y'all up from the airport after that trip, and I remember telling myself Ben's gonna start talking as soon as he gets in the truck.
Dude, of course.
And he's gonna talk the whole way there, and it might not even be about the trip. It could be something completely different.
Dude, yeah, I know it's bad. I'm sorry, man. You can always just walk away from me, but it's different, right? Whenever it's people that you're trying to be, just to be nice with, or
cordial with.
If it's like someone that's like drunk and rambling or just someone that's like passionate about something, like how I'm sure that I am with mountain biking, probably like 5 times too much, right? Like something new comes up that's super interesting to me and I just feel the need that I always have to share my thoughts with everybody. So that's what I do. And then I know a lot of y'all are sitting around like, dude, we just don't care. Like it's just whatever, man. You talk and like get done with it. Sports
are that's like that's the number one topic that happens to be the most. Like,
definitely.
Because I don't care. I love sports. Well, I appreciate it. I love watching it. It's just when it comes down to the stats and just the continuation of talking about it, where it's like do none of y'all have anything else to like say or talk about? A lot of
people are just they get really like invested in sports teams and they learn a lot about it. It's a form of entertainment, so it's kind of like passively learning things, right? As they're watching these games, as they're listening to the commentators that are throwing out random facts here and there, and they start to pick up, and then they do this for years and years. And they compile this little folder in their head of all this sports information.
It's got to go somewhere.
And they go well whenever they meet up with other people with all that sports information, and they talk, especially if they're like same team or rival teams or just different teams, same division, whatever it may be. And like I was saying earlier, cars are the same way, right? People that know a lot about like cars can talk about cars for a long time. But for me, it's like, dang, I know a little bit about some cars, but there's just so many different like makes and models of cars and different things here and there. Like the guy I work with, he can tell you everything about like all these old cars.
Yeah.
But for me, like I don't know stuff about old cars, especially. Like I don't know stuff about cars that were made 15 years ago or 10 years ago, let alone cars that were 50 years ago. So those conversations are difficult to get out of, especially if it's someone you work with or someone that you see regularly, but you're not close enough with to be like, yo, bro, like, I gotta go. I got some. Macy saved me in Minnesota. This one kid was there. He's a younger guy. I say kid. He's like a college guy, maybe like 23, 22, something like that. Anyway, he was like talking with me about all sorts of different stuff because like they're from Minnesota and we were from Texas, and he was drunk and just rambling and rambling. And Macy came through and she was like, she did something at first that like I didn't notice. She says I don't remember, but then she came through and she was like, "Hey, like we're over here eating. Like you need to get your food." Like I didn't need to get my food or whatever, but she just knew. She was like, "You're really stuck in that conversation," and like,
Yeah, you can tell.
Time to get out.
You can tell when you know somebody and you see them off of the distance talking with somebody, and they're just doing that. Yeah, like that kind of a net head nod. Just yeah, and you tell they're not interested. You can see it on their face, especially when you know somebody. Maybe the other person that you're having the conversation with doesn't pick up on that, but that's another skill that I think people need to have a better idea of is when you're talking with somebody, knowing that they're about to check out. Like if I'm talking to somebody and I'm doing that to somebody where they're not really interested in what I'm talking about, I can usually pick up on how to taper that off and let's move on to something else or split ways. I think it's obviously a skill, just like conversation in general is a skill. But I think too a really cool skill and something to be really good at is being able to talk about just about anything. No, you don't have to be an expert at it. You don't know how, like for sports, in instance, I can talk about sports to a certain degree. I'm not going to just spit off
You're
facts.
not giving classes. You're not teaching lessons, but you're able to carry the conversation.
I can carry it on for an amount of time, and then I have to move on to something else.
Yeah.
But that's just me personally.
That was one of our goals and something we've worked on just with having this podcast is between you and I, like working on our conversation skills.
Yeah.
And being able to carry a conversation, being able to listen, generate thoughts and provide that feedback and be respectful of the other person talking. I've got some particular people that I know, and I may be one of them, but not as bad as I've seen other people, but it's something that I've recognized too, is that like, they dominate the conversation a little too much. Like sometimes, it's fine for someone to dominate the conversation and lead it. But sometimes it's like, oh, this person doesn't even care for like my response. Like they're talking and then like getting confirmation, just continue talking like right over you.
Yeah.
And, like sometimes I'll try to like put in or change the conversation a little bit to maybe something that I know or whatever. And then they'll just like grab it back right back into their direction or their corner. And I'm like, okay, man, like I don't even want to have a conversation with you.
Yeah,
now.
that's annoying and just not considerate, and it shows that they're not a good communicator. And
no, and that can be bad in a professional sense.
Oh, absolutely. There has to be a respect level whenever you're talking at a corporate level, or just especially if like you're a salesperson, right? I feel like to be a good salesperson, you have to make the other person feel like they're in the conversation too, that you're not just totally dominating them. Like if you go into I think like car salesmen are pretty bad at this. At least my experiences so far is that when you walk in, they're coming right up to you. They're pushing you to either want to buy a car or get into that conversation of what are you looking for, this kind of that, or not just saying, hey, like what are you here doing today? Like, how's your day? Just starting off a little bit casual and then moving into it's just a skill and it's a feel thing. And
right,
whether or not that makes you a good or bad salesman, I'm sure it's different for any industry. But I know in my industry, the pipeline industry, we have salespeople that work for our company, and how they handle a sale versus how a car person handles a sale, and in the conversation that happens between the two parties, totally different, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, 100%. I've never even been a salesperson either, so I kind of recognize what you're talking about when you relate it back to like a car salesman, because I've shopped around for vehicles before. I've never been in that person's shoes, and at the end of the day, time is kind of money. Like if they see you and don't get the right responses, they may be like, you know what, this guy's obviously not here to buy today. He's here to look today. I'm gonna move on to somebody else that may be more interested in buying. I don't know. So maybe that plays a role that, we're not able to see without being in those shoes. But I just think all in all, if you're a better conversationalist, is that how it's? If you're a better conversationalist, then it's going to help you out with your friends, your family, and like your interactions, like just on a social level, but also in the professional sense. I think it's going to take you a little bit further too, especially for like people like you and I that are looking to go to more management type lead roles. And if you're going to get into management, part of that is communicating with your team, communicating with other, management leaders, other groups, whatever. So
and knowing how to communicate to a bad communicator. Knowing how to handle that, that's a skill in itself. Even though you might be a great communicator, you might run into a brick wall of a person that is either stubborn or, I mean, I've come across people like that. Or there is no conversation to be had, and it might be a one-way conversation. They might not pick up on anything you're saying or the point that you're trying to get across. They might be totally resistant to it, and that can be really annoying, very frustrating, especially, and I've seen it to where I've seen leaders, I've seen it like from the outside. I'm outside looking in of this conversation going on where it's this stonewall person and this either leader or manager trying to get a point across, and it's a clear point. It's not a complicated point he's trying to make, but you can just see the other side. It's just they're just blocking it. They're not. Yeah. It's not going through.
Not receptive at all.
So to see that from the outside and see how frustrating it is, or feel that frustration just myself looking at it, I can only imagine what it's like to be the other person trying to make a point or trying to convey something to the other person.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, right? We get to see that a lot more as you start to branch out and step into the world a little bit more. You kind of start to recognize how different things and people are than you might have thought they were, like growing up. Like we're both still coming from like a very young, naive kind of mindset, right?
Yeah.
But growing up, you can only learn what's available to you, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, you know, I would grow up and I guess what you would call like a privileged world. I don't know what you would even put it in. I mean, society. Just the way I grew up. Like it's not my fault. It's where I was born and raised, middle class type,
privilege,
white person in a smallish town, but not a big town, not a small town. You know, like it was just very average to me, which obviously is way different than someone who grew up in Chicago. You know, but you grow up thinking, and you're like, for me at least, you learn from your parents and the adults that you have in your life, which are your parents and your educators and maybe your coaches and your parents' friends and different people that you kind of like come in contact with. But you're like, okay, those are adults. This is how adults act. These are other kids. These are my friends. These are not my friends. These are people I get along with, people I don't. And then you get in the real world and you start realizing like there's so many adults, right? And now y'all are all like working together in your professional sense or just out in line at a restaurant or whatever, and some people are just so different than you would ever imagine them to be.
Yeah.
And I know that I'm being kind of vague, and I wish like I had a really good example, but just it's like whenever you're out somewhere and you see someone like making a big deal out of something, and you're like, man, like that shouldn't be a big deal. Or you're in like a professional business meeting and someone's like very aggravated or upset or just like checked out and not even like paying attention at all. Just different things like that, and you realize how different the world is than you thought it might have been growing up. And like obviously it's a part of maturing and a part of aging, and it's something that you'll, I'm sure, continue to learn as you continue to grow and develop and stuff. But it's something that I picked up on recently, and I know you have too, because we kind of talked about like how unstructured things are, right?
Yeah, when you grow up and you're, you know, preteen, teen, and then kind of when you get into college, that's where it starts to morph into adulthood. Yeah, you have this idea of what adults are, you know, really, you know, your parents, right? That's like the main adults that you know.
Of course, yeah.
Your friends' parents, your teachers, just that your relatively small world that you have in that moment in life. Those are your examples of what adults are. And to that you feel so far removed from that age of being an adult. It just seems so far off. It seems to be at this certain level. And then whenever you start to transition into, which is the point that we're at right now, we're in that transition of becoming adults. You know, we are now, but we're in that very early stage. And so it's kind of a trippy thing to think about. And I started noticing it as soon as I got into the workforce, of just like, man, your ideas of age and maturity level and the match of those two, it totally shifts whenever you become an adult. They don't necessarily match like as you thought they would. You think of like a 60-year-old as being this mature person that's got it somewhat together, that handles situations in a mature way. Come to find out that I've seen people at that age handle it completely different. You know,
you start to realize that age does not define like maturity, mindset. It may provide experiences, but age is really like a very, very small piece of the puzzle, right, that makes up what this person is.
Yeah.
And like I learned that, you know, I feel like I can appreciate a little bit of a diverse background from like working construction whenever I was like all in high school,
Mm-hmm.
working my job at Buc-ee's, working at Amazon, working at Range Air, working, where I'm at now, working at like, a startup company. Like just I've gotten to experience a lot of different things, and like it's very small in the grand scheme of things. But I did pick up on that, like especially when I was at Amazon, because that is like 300 plus employees that I was working around on a daily basis, all at different places in their life with different goals, but all working relatively similar jobs, or at least in the same industry. Like even the management team and stuff, I got to see them, and very young managers, very old managers, very young kind of just general labor type workers, and very old general labor type workers, and just you get to start being around all that, and you're like, wow, age really doesn't really define you in a significant way in the world that we live in,
especially in a professional setting too, because you think of, I mean, I've seen people that are towards retirement and they have decided, or however it played out for them, I'm not the one to say, but chose to stay at a level of either management and not decided to go up to a bigger role than that. But you kind of start to see that where it's like people find their level and they just stay where they're at. They don't just continue to rise and get promoted. And that's something that's really interesting that I've started to notice as becoming adult, and being surrounded by people that are our age, 30 years old, 40 years old, and 50s and 60s. And you see people that there's a person close to retirement that I work with who is a project manager, and there's levels above that, but that's where they're at, and they seem happy. They seem like they enjoy their job, but they've chosen to do that. That's just something that's really interesting to me. I've always thought that when you grow up, there's always levels to get to.
Yeah, you kind of push. That's one thing. A lot of people don't push their boundaries. They don't try to break the barriers that they're currently in. A lot of people just kind of work a job that they have or whatever. More so. Okay, well, I don't know if it's fair to say more so, but speaking from my experience whenever I was at Amazon, just because that's where I've been, that's had the largest amount of diverse people at it. The general worker will not push to excel, push to move forward. Like the general worker, the mass population that was there, a manager would have to come to them and call them out to maybe apply for a promotion or to try to go somewhere else. That was kind of how things worked. So it stands out more those that are already pushing forward and trying to do more and trying to take on more responsibility. And that's a place that's very structured too. So you have to be careful, right, stepping up and trying to take more responsibility whenever it's not necessarily your time, or you're working at a company that doesn't really support that or allow it. But for the most part, most people just kind of stay in their own lane and just kind of follow the protocol. And there's like big companies like that are set to where you're able to move up. Like you're going to have reviews like eventually and like opportunities, but it's not the same kind of opportunities if you go out there and you kind of just are pushing your bounds a little bit, reaching a little bit further than what's bare minimally asked of you. Yeah. And so those people shine a lot more. In that big of a crowd, at least, those people shine a lot more. Now, it's different whenever you get more into like the industries that you and I work in now, because you're surrounded by, or you're more commonly probably surrounded by people that are pushing those a little bit, just because that they may have had to do that somewhere along the way to get to the job that they're at now, right? So for you and I to graduate with engineering degrees, there was a time, at least for me, where I had to step up and say, hey, like, I'm going to try for this degree. I'm going to try to pass this class. I'm going to try to get through this. And like all those were like effort. Not easy steps. They were something I was having to push myself to do. But some people, man, I always sit back and think like a small part of me wishes that I could just be like really like happy and complacent in like something, there's like a small sense of like comfortability whenever you're somewhere that you understand and you're good at, right? And you're not pushing any boundaries and you're just day in, day out, you're punching clock and kind of doing it. Because I used to love that about working construction. I would just work construction all day long during the summers, and it was hard work, and the pay was not great, and it was like out in the sun and everything. But at the end of the day, it's like, well, my job's done now. It's 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, whatever time we got off. Job's done now. Go home, chill. Like, you don't have anything to do. Whereas like now, there's always like something kind of in the background going. I'm always like pushing myself. So I wish that I could be the kind of person to just take that mental break and just keep doing my thing, but it's just not how I am.
I feel like though that kind of a thought, depending on the kind of person you are, I would say for me and you, that thought, I think everybody has it. Everybody has that thought of, man, like I could just be here and be good. I think I've got all my needs met. I can be happy here. But there's also this part of us, personally, me and you, and people that we know that, and people in this world, obviously, that just strive for more. That's just something that's innate
never enough.
in you.
You're always trying to push forward.
And so to me, that kind of a thought of, which, I have all the time of, this is comfortable. Let's just stay here for a little bit.
Yeah,
I usually denounce that kind of a thought. I think it's a lie. That's how I think of it. It's like, no, that's a bad part of my brain trying to talk and trying to override me wanting to progress and get better at something and be uncomfortable, because I've learned a lot recently that being uncomfortable, those are the kind of situations that you are uncomfortable, I learn the most, and that you should learn the most. And so I just, to me personally, the thought of being comfortable, and it's good at times, right, to kind of sit back, sit in a moment and enjoy it,
catch your breath,
take some time, but then it's got to be right on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, that can be tiring. This goes back to why we called this podcast The Restless Minds, is because our minds are always kind of reaching for the next thing. It's always finding how can we go further in what we're doing, as a person or as a professional, or whatever it is in a relationship, name it. It's something that our brain is always moving towards and always thinking about, and that can be exhausting. It can be uncomfortable. It kind of be like, damn, I wish this could just shut off for a second. But I know that's like a thing that I'm glad I have, and I'm
definitely
for you too.
It's not just you and I, obviously, but like just talking like from our experience, and I know a lot of people like this. But yeah, it's always like on to the next thing. Whenever something ends, we don't really spend a whole lot of time just chilling out or relaxing. And like even for me, I'll complain a lot about, I'm tired, man. Like we've just been going nonstop. We always got something every weekend. I'm so ready for a weekend. I can just sit down and chill. But I do it to myself. And I know that I do it. I know it whenever I'm making the plans. I know that I'm busying up my schedule and that I'm going to feel like this. But immediately the first day that I have with nothing going on, like I don't just sit on the couch all day. Like I don't do that. Like I can't, because then it's even worse. So I immediately plan something for that day. I feel that time just so quickly. I'm like, oh, I got a free day. It's like, well, I've been sitting here saying I wish I could have a free day for 3 weeks now. And you're telling me I got one free day and I'm already looking to fill it. Like that's just how it works. So I've kind of accepted it. It's one of those things that's just how I'm programmed. And I'm sure that's how I'll be for a long time.
Well, and two, like, I mean, we took a little bit of a hiatus from this podcast for, I would say, about a month.
Yeah. Almost
and I think
month.
that was us kind of realizing like we had a lot more stuff going on. We kind of had our own things, you especially, but then me, I just kind of wanted to put my brain elsewhere for the time being. It's just kind of knowing that, okay, let's take a step back here. Let's take a break. Let's refresh our mind when it's coming to the podcast, specifically in this case, that we just, we've been doing this for a year, give or take, at that point, right before we kind of took a little break. And I think it was good, right? It was good for us. I think it was needed. It gave us time to kind of decompress when it comes to doing this every other week, or whenever we decide to do it, pumping out the episodes. It was good. And so it's just being able to realize that and notice that however you're looking at it in whatever point in life and whatever parts of your life that you're trying to go, hey, like I want to keep going. Well, no, let's take a step back. Like that's a really important thing that I think that it keeps you from being burnt out. It keeps you from getting stale. I think that's a really good skill to have, and just a thing to notice whenever you're people like us who just want to keep going and not stop, and get that's an uncomfortable feeling to stall. Almost.
Right. There's also kind of, the fine line. You have to tune it a little bit to however you work, where we needed the break, but you don't want to take too long of a break.
Yeah.
Because too long of a break and we might, you might come back and not be able to get back on track. I feel like that whenever I take a break from the gym. Like there are times where like I'll stop working out for like a week or something, and I'm like, man, it's been nice to like sleep in and kind of catch up on some things and not feel like, urgently needing to find time to fit a gym workout into my day. But if it's too long, it's really hard to get back in the swing of things. Whereas also our episodes and stuff, like our content may have went downhill if we just kind of slowly kept forcing ourselves to do it every other week, but like our minds weren't in. I think we still both started to feel that a little bit, like on these last like episodes we recorded. We're like, man, like kind of we just lost a little bit of our oomph, right?
Yeah.
Like we were exhausted coming into, like, just in general, we've been stupid busy too. Like, talk about filling the weekends and staying busy. We've had a lot going on. Things have been picking up for you with your work. Things have been picking up for me with my work. We've been traveling. There's actually a lot to recap too. You know, we haven't even recorded since before my birthday, which was beginning of June.
Yeah,
and we've done our mountain bike trip.
We got the episode of right after your proposal.
It's just right after the engagement, and since then it's been go.
Yeah, we took a little bit of time off right after that.
Yeah, I took the boys mountain biking.
Yeah, dude.
Second time
Yeah,
out.
let's talk about what we've been up to a little bit.
All right.
So I mean, obviously you're engaged at this point.
Yeah.
Right. The guy is engaged, not just the girl's engaged, right?
Yeah, the guy's definitely engaged.
Okay.
You know how much I spent
Well,
on the ring?
Well, no, I was just like, is
I'm
there
definitely engaged.
Is there like another term? I was thinking. I was like,
No.
it sounded weird.
Well, it's weird though, right? Because we're both a fiance,
Yeah.
but then it becomes husband and wife. But like fiance is, I think, gender neutral. I don't think there's any other way to say it for guy or girl.
I always thought that it's kind of weird that like fiance sounds like it's the feminine version, but
It
what's
does.
the male version of it? Because there's
still
always
it's still a fiance.
you have the bride and groom.
Yeah.
You have the,
No, it's interesting. It's also super weird whenever you're talking to people that I've been telling about my girlfriend, and now it's no longer, oh, my girlfriend and I went to Minnesota to visit her family. It's my fiance and I, and it's weird because it's only like
you
that
slipped?
for like a year and a half. I mean, it's not.
well, I
like,
slip, but I mean, like it's like,
It's not
oh,
the
I'm sorry, my
Yeah,
fiance,
yeah.
that kind of thing.
I haven't like slipped and corrected myself because no one like notices, but I definitely took a little bit for me to like get used to it. But that's not like a bad slip. That's not the
No,
same
it's
kind
not
of
a bad
slip of
slip.
like, oh, do you have a girlfriend? No, I don't. Oh, I mean, yeah, actually I do. Like,
Yeah.
that's a bad slip. You know?
Or it's like whenever somebody's in like when they're talking with somebody and they get asked that, like, oh, like, is that your girlfriend? And you're like, not really, but like y'all are talking or whatever. And that's
Yeah.
just like one of those weird. This situation's a little bit more, I guess. There's not like for you, right? You got engaged. That's it. You're now fiancés with each other. You were
Right.
girlfriend and
Well,
boyfriend.
I know where you're going. Like today's dating age, it's like weird because it's
Yeah.
like with titles, and a lot of times titles don't really get talked about, and things just kind of like progress until there is eventually like a definitive title. But I don't know. Is that relatable or something to you?
A little bit.
Anyway, we've been having a good time, taking some time off. Got the boys down to Spider Mountain in Burnet, Texas, and we all took
Dude, that was a good
some
time.
gnarly crashes. Still
We all
recovering.
took one.
My knees are still kind of messed up, but yeah, we all took at least one. Some of us more than others.
Everybody pays the toll.
Yep.
Dude, I had a gnarly one that should have been a lot worse.
Yeah, I was gonna say you rolled through yours really well, and I think Travis came away pretty unscathed. Clint definitely was struggling rash wise, and my knees got pretty tore up.
He was a trooper, man.
Oh, for sure.
No, that was a lot of fun. And I know you had talked about it in that trip, and then we had our North Carolina trip that we had where we went mountain biking, and I had the same experience. Obviously, that same experience with Spider Mountain, but this one was like, it was more profound. It's like that feeling afterwards of just complete joy of like, oh man, that was such a good time. Like, even though we all kind of got hurt a little bit, and you know, you're
smiling,
you're sore, you're tired.
happy.
It's just you're satisfied. Like
Yeah.
that's pure satisfaction of my time was well spent for the day, and that's something that you don't get all the time, right? You don't need to have that kind of a feeling, but when you do and it's true, like, oh, it feels so good. Like it's like this warm bubble bath of like, like that just
Yep.
good feelings,
And
man. Good vibes.
My plan is starting to work because
Yeah, dude.
Travis is a lot more persuasive than you guys, I think, or easily persuaded. I would be the persuasive one, but he's real interested in getting a mountain bike, especially if he moves up here for his work. And I'm talking Clint into it slowly, and I'm massaging it into you, Blake, and just gonna get all my buddies out biking with me, so I don't have to be a loner on the trails anymore.
Well, here's the thing though, with that kind of stuff, right? It's so much better if you have a group to do it with.
Oh, it definitely is. And you also push yourselves. And one thing I was super proud of us at Spider Mountain is that we all crashed. Because if we didn't crash, then yeah, it's great. We didn't crash. We had a great time. But I feel like there's a little bit to say that we all did crash because we were pushing ourselves a little bit harder. You know, each time we would do something, we would say, okay, can I do that a little bit better, a little bit faster, a little bit harder, you know, whatever it may be. And I think that inevitably you're going to crash if you're pushing yourself. And so that's why, like, the crashes for me are like kind of signify that yeah, we were getting out there and like trying to put in work, trying to learn, trying to get better, trying to push ourselves. And that's what it's not all about, but that's an exciting part of it for me. And I think that's also where like some of that runner's high type endorphins come from, is like really kind of pushing your boundaries and being like, whoo, dude, I almost lost it on that last one back there, that drop, you know, but like I didn't. Like,
Well, I was taking a shower earlier before I came over here to record, and I had that exact thought of, it was very similar to what running is. Kind of, you get, it's a focus thing, and that's why I'd really like, you know, mountain biking. It's a lot of fun. One, because it's an adrenaline rush, right? But it requires focus. It requires your attention fully the time that you're going down the hill or you're riding the bike, right? Because you look off one area, then you'll hit a rock that you weren't anticipating. You miss a turn, you take it too quick. Like, so it just takes, there's a lot of your mental and your physical skills are all firing all at the same time. Yep. So it's this moment of pure focus. And I think that's same with like running, especially when you get to a point where you're really tired, you hit a wall. Nothing else comes into your brain. Nothing else matters. There's no thoughts, outside thoughts. It's just one foot in front of the other. And there's like a high from that. There's something in those moments of pure focus that's very satisfying. It's good for your brain. It
definitely is.
Because we don't get that in normal society, right? Because we live comfortably. There's not, I think, you know, back on our ancestors hunting and making sure that we don't get attacked by a lion, or, you know, you have those moments a lot more, and that's what our brains are used to. That's what we've, you know, evolved with, is that ability to be able to focus and watch and protect ourselves and stuff. So to put your mind and your body in a situation like that, again, I think your body kind of craves it. So that's why it's like, it feels good, especially after the fact of like, man, like we busted our ass. Like, it was fun. It was a lot of focus. You know, we tried our best not to wreck.
And also it's weird because you don't think about it, but you understand the consequences of wrecking, right? Yeah. You understand whenever you're just hauling ass downhill over a bunch of rocks and roots and jumps and drops and things, that you're having to make very quick decisions, very precise decisions about which line you're going to take, where you're going to go. And you know that the consequences of them, like, sometimes are, you know, obviously worse than others, but generally, like, crashing hurts. Like, that shit sucks. And like, you can very easily break bones and tear things and really mess yourself up. So just a part of that, going down, making all these quick decisions and making the right decision and recovering from possibly the wrong decision, and all that, I think, plays into it, the way that our brain receives it, interprets it, and like kind of appreciates it in a sense. And it's not like that for everybody. Like, some people I don't think would fit well with those kind of like sports.
Yeah.
But for us, it fits well with us, and I think that's part of what makes it like so enjoyable.
Well, I noticed whenever I had my wreck, right, and it might have been different if I broke my bone and I couldn't get up from it or whatever, but like you said, like, I kind of rolled off of it, luckily, which is an amazing thing in itself, your body's ability to just, I'll handle it from here, and get you out of the situation before your brain can even think about it. Just your reactions, even though that can hurt you sometimes. You put your arm out, you stick your arm out, and you break it because you fell on it. But your body's ability to go, oh, we're in danger, let's roll this one off, without really even thinking about it. I don't remember having that thought of rolling off the bike, or, you know, just kind of rolling and catching myself to where I'm not sliding and rolling down the hill completely. Like, that's not a thought that I remember having, but my body did it.
Yep.
But I remember,
you kind of curl up, like, naturally protect your organs, and like you kind of roll. Yeah, it's
stick your head up. That way you're not smacking your head.
Your video of you crash, and you can see like it's just like one tumble, two tumble, like
momentum going.
Just a couple of little rolls,
but after that, in the video, I like just went like whoo, like I just was hyped because again, I didn't break anything. Right, that would have been a different story. But there was my heart was racing. I felt kind of a crazy good. It was a weird, because I just got on the bike and kept going.
Yeah.
For one, because I was like, let's just not think about any of the scratches or scars that I might have. Like, let's just get down the hill.
Adrenaline.
Yeah, let's use this adrenaline. That way I don't feel the pain until maybe later. But luckily I came off with like barely any scratches. But yeah, there was a weird high after the crash. And I've noticed that even after whenever I went for the first time with you and I wrecked on that jump. I was kind of shaky a little bit, like just the adrenaline and everything, but it was like all right, let's go get like.
Yeah, you kind of check yourself out and you're like, cool. Like, okay, we're good. Yeah, even then you were like, you were a little hesitant, right? You're like, all right, I'm done jumping. But you were like so quick to come back and just say.
Yeah, I just need a moment.
All right, nah, I gotta get this again. I
Yeah,
gotta go for
and
it.
that's a certain person.
It definitely is, yeah.
That might not be for everybody.
I'll tell you, I did not roll and recover like you did whenever I crashed at Spider Mountain. I skidded on all fours right over the bars and just knees, elbows, everything pretty eaten up. And I was just like, oh, shit.
And your
I was
knees
just,
took the brunt of it all.
I was like,
mostly.
ooh, that hurt. You know, like it took me a minute. I wasn't like, all right, full of adrenaline, like let's keep going. But like I definitely checked everything out and was like, all right, well, time to ride the bottom and clean up a little bit, and then we'll just, get right back on it. You know, what are you gonna do?
There's only one way down the mountain.
And then for me too,
hill.
something I was really looking forward to was like the big berm, the Texas flag berm.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't tell you how many times like I've replayed and like watched that video of me like going on it. But that was like a big accomplishment for me. And that was after I crashed and everything. That was literally the last run down the mountain. I was like, dude, I will regret if I drive home and did not like really give it all on this. And so being able to like kind of conquer that in my head, right? Mm-hmm. That's what, like, even when we were going up on the lift and I was like, guys, I'm going to get into that white. And then I went up on the lift a separate time and I was with Travis and I watched somebody not hit the white. And I was like, oh man, like that is way higher than I expected. And then I did it and I got up in there, but just afterwards, like I yelled so loud. I was just like, whoo, yeah, like, hell yeah, like let's go. Like I was so pumped and so excited. Feeling. And like, that is what I remember the most out of like that trip was just like, I crashed and that hurt, but then after the crash, came back and accomplished like one of my goals for that day, and that was just far superior to any of the negative feelings around crashing or just being exhausted or just a long day out there in the sun. Like,
what is that though? Like what is that? And there's different
right?
there's different degrees of it, right? There's I had a good workout, I'm tired. That's a good feeling of being tired, knowing that you put in the work, and then there's a feeling of I kind of crashed, kind of got banged up. To me, that kind of feels good too. Like it's kind of in the same realm of like, like I pushed myself, I lived. Like that's how I probably felt after the wreck. It's like it just made me feel alive in a crazy way.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. It's definitely different, but like relatable.
Yeah,
the two are similar in a couple ways, but very, very different.
Just lets you know that you're alive. The pain and the adrenaline and the excitement, it all comes back to I feel alive. Like
I think a little bit where you're going, because there certainly is something about feeling physical, feeling like kind of tangible, like I can break or I can get scuffed up and like I'm okay. Mm-hmm. Like I can keep going. Just like you said, feeling alive. I don't know how to describe it or really explain it better. I think a lot of people can relate though to what we're talking about.
Well, I mean, I'm sure that feeling is what drives
so many insane sports. And
the whatever you call it, extreme sports. Mountain biking, the squirrel suit people
do is insane.
Yeah,
the things that people do in this world is crazy. It really is. Like if you go. Like I noticed it whenever I took a deep dive into mountain biking and I went and looked at all the Red Bull Rampage and Dark Fest and like all these other like mountain bike things, and people do insane shit.
I mean, Red Bull as a company, company focuses on that completely. That's their whole game is like
extreme shit.
People doing crazy wild things that don't make sense. Why would you do that? And very dangerous. It's like the squirrel suits. People die on that thing all the time.
I watched the interview of a guy that his like best friend died. He watched that video go down and he couldn't do anything about it because like you can't just turn around or anything. No. And he was like, I knew almost
you had to leave him.
Yeah.
That's a sport where it's like you mess up and there's really no recovering from it.
Those are some consequences.
But I'm sure not everybody stopped doing it. I bet the next day somebody did it.
I bet the feeling whenever they land and they're done with that, I bet that feeling just is insane.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's got to top the feeling of being scared to do it. That's not something. No, I'm not gonna say that's not something I couldn't do, but that's not something I'd be ready to do very soon. You know what I mean? Like if someone came to you with the opportunity of doing the squirrel suit thing, they're like, hey, look, you got a 1 week training course. Everything's paid for. Everything's been tested. You're gonna fall. You're gonna watch the coaches, and then you're gonna fly with your coaches at the end of the week or whatever. Like that. I don't know if that's something I'm ready for. I'm still struggling with like a little bit of fear of heights. I would need and
more than a week.
Yeah, of training. Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying at this point in my life right now, like it's not really something like I'd be ready for. But
I think I would like to do that. That'd be cool. Having the right training
Maybe.
and going skydiving and doing like working up towards that. Like first skydive, right? Just dropping straight down.
Yeah.
Getting used to free falling and being in the air, just your body with some equipment. Getting used to that,
See,
and
I
then
don't really
working
know
your
how I
way.
would do skydiving either. Like, that's something that I've always said, like, oh, that'd be really cool to do. But I've struggled with heights since I was little, and I haven't really pushed those boundaries in a really, really long time. But I had one experience, particularly whenever I was young. I was at church camp, and I climbed to the very top. It's like a rock wall. You climb to the very top, and you zip line down. And I'd never zip lined like that before. And I just got to the top, and I was just so scared. Like, it took me like a couple minutes to be able to like get off of the edge and actually zip line down.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I hyped myself up all going up. That looks so cool. This is gonna be so fun. But getting
When
there,
you get there.
yeah, like I feel like that's like might, if I ever do, which I definitely plan on going skydiving. But like whenever I do, like the initial push to jump out is like I think gonna be a struggle for me.
Well, and two, when you do it for the first time, you're attached to somebody,
Yeah,
and so that probably adds
different.
to it. You're not so much in control. You're just kind of along for the ride.
yeah,
I had that first kind of a feeling whenever I went bungee jumping. You go all the way up to the top. You get all suited up. They strap you in, do all the things they need to do, give you the rundown of what's going to happen, and then you step to the edge, and that's when like your instincts kick in of like what your brain's like, what are you doing?
Unnatural.
Like what do you, even though that you know that you're attached to stuff that is going to keep you safe, you're not going to fall down to the ground to your death, hopefully not, but
Hopefully not.
your brain is like, dude, what are you doing? And so that's a hard thing to overcome, but I think once you break that barrier, it becomes easier and easier, and it just I would like to do the
squirrel suits.
Well, what you should do first, because I've heard it's fairly similar. Like obviously it's not the same thing, but those indoor skydiving places, the I fly,
Yeah.
I've done those before. And I was talking with the instructor when I went, and he said it's a very similar feeling. Obviously, it's not it completely, and you're in an enclosed tube. But it's fairly close to that feeling of the wind pushing. Your brain gets tricked into thinking that's what it's doing, and it was really fun. So like I think that would be a really cool thing for maybe like you to do, or I'll do it again. Fuck it.
Yeah.
But it gives you that feeling of without having necessarily the danger of it. That's what I'm saying. Like so if I was to want to do the wingsuit thing, if I had an opportunity, I would start me in the tube. And then move on to skydiving.
Yeah.
I feel like that's like a good progression up to, and then base jumping. That's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
But that's
those are all obvious progression steps, and I think it's whenever it comes down to something like that, it's obvious that you have to work your way up to it. You don't just jump out into the suits. I don't know though. It's like I talked myself up it the whole way that I was climbing up to that zip line, and I was like 6 or maybe like 8. I don't know.
It'd be totally different now if you did it.
Different story. Yeah, I'll push those boundaries at some point. That was a ramble. Where do we get back to?
Man, we were just kind of talking about what we were up to and really just Spider Mountain. But I mean, we got things planned. We have Mexico coming up.
So excited! Celebrate 4th of July.
We just go,
in
dude.
Mexico. We do. Yeah,
and I love it. I love that I have friends that aren't lazy, that just like to sit around, that we actually make an effort to do, because it takes effort, right? It takes effort to buy the tickets, to set up the trip, to make the commitment, to take the PTO, but it's so worth it. And when you have a friend group to do that with, that just is a whole nother level. And I grew up, luckily I had a dad who pushed us to get out there and explore and take trips and experience things.
You really grew up in a family that did a lot of this kind of stuff. So for you, I feel like it's kind of back to like relatable, back natural for you. Like it's obviously still exciting and stuff, but it probably feels different to you than it does like for me. Cause like my family growing up, we really didn't do like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We've mostly focused on like whatever our livestock shows were or whatever sports we were in at the time. But I didn't do a whole lot of like traveling, didn't do like a whole lot of camping or even like hunting and fishing trips and things like that. Like the outdoor stuff is what like I've really been appreciative of. And I think a big thing that kicked it off was like our snowboarding trip this past Christmas. That was like one of our first big
Real
out-of-state
active
group trips.
Yeah.
Very active, very going, you know.
That's
and,
true. That
it was such a great time.
was that like our first. I'm trying to think of beforehand what trip that we took that would be
With
at the
that big
same
of a
level.
group, I don't know that we had one.
Yeah.
But we did Palo Duro before that,
Yeah,
which
with-
was a
with
great
three of
trip.
us.
That was
Mhm.
just me and Clint, and that was more. Yeah, I mean, it was just hiking and hanging out and just outdoor stuff.
It just makes you want to do more. Like it just
Definitely.
especially like I had said, this is my third time going to Mexico, the time that we're going now in a week. And it just makes me want to go to other places of the world. Like, because now I've experienced Mexico, I think, enough for me. Obviously, I'll go if there's a chance with other people, but I want to make a point to go elsewhere in the world to experience just life and how other people live life and just see. I always told myself, like, I think that would be just so fucking cool that if you had the monetary means and the time where you didn't have to work, be at a job, like to go off and go on just I'm just going to go, I'm going to start here and then I'm going to spend some time and then I'm going to fly to somebody just to kind of hop a little bit. I think that just would be really, really cool and an experience. I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about like college education and the benefits of it, and is it worth going to if you're not going into a field that necessarily requires it? Like, what are some? Oh, you know who it was? It was Mark Cuban. I'm pretty sure it was Mark Cuban, and someone had asked him about college and what he thinks about college and stuff, and he goes, like, honestly, I would rather my kids go study abroad and travel and work out of the country and get experience that way. The way that he sees it being a more well-rounded. He's like, obviously, if you're going to be a doctor or an engineer or a field that requires it, and you need that education, you need that degree or certificate, obviously go that route. But I mean,
for the money versus experience that you get, yeah, you could get a lot out of taking that same amount of money and really traveling.
But the world doesn't see it that way, right? Like, the American economy and how you get jobs nowadays, that's not the way it's
starting to make those kind of shifts, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
I've heard like Elon talks a lot about like how you don't need school and college. And like I know a lot of people too that like I follow on Twitter and things like that will talk about how college is a scam or this and that. Like obviously I have a biased opinion, but like I agree to a certain extent. There's a lot of things you can learn online, but I've also worked in a field like particularly in like the industry I'm in that you can't Google and get the answer you need.
Yeah.
The answer is in a textbook.
Mm-hmm.
Textbooks are so detailed. And yeah, you could go out and buy textbooks, but like for me, I can't structure my week well enough to get through a textbook.
Yeah.
No, and I'm not saying get through a textbook in a week. I'm just saying like on a week by week basis, I can't structure it in a way that I would retain concentration and learn things.
Mm-hmm.
But whenever I'm paying for an education and have a schedule that I have to keep, and I'm going through it with a bunch of other people too, that are all studying similar things, that's where I think you start getting the value out of college. Now, obviously, I went with like a technical background, like in a technical degree, so yes, there's it's different than maybe if I went and got a communications degree. And I'm not trying to compare the two and better or worse. I'm just saying that there's obviously different curriculum. Mm-hmm. And for my specific like going through all the calculus classes and stuff like that, I needed to go to that class every morning at 8:00, and I needed some of my best friends and my just peers to be sitting there next to me with the same kind of struggles and us staying up late and studying to be able to get through those kind of things and just to be able to grasp the amount of knowledge that I did while getting my degree. And that's not something that I could ever, I don't care how much money it may have cost and how long you have to pay those debts back and things like that. And like, I didn't have school paid for me, so I do have debts. I do have student loans I got to pay back. I couldn't have done it. I couldn't have done it without it. So some people can go on YouTube and learn and can take online classes and schedule themselves and learn all these things. And they may not need college, but for me, it was make it or break it. I would not be in the position I'm in now without a college degree, without my specific college degree. And that's just my biased opinion and experience with it, you know?
And the thing that I think about too, that I'm glad that I have a mindset of, and you do too, is that when you're done with college, You're not necessarily done learning. Like
No, lifelong learning is so important.
to
And
to focus on that.
Most important thing I took from college was how to learn, right? I learned how to learn, and then I perfected that as a skill. Like that's really what I got out of college, was that I learned how to come into a chemistry class that I'm not interested in learn, and I learned how to go into a mechanical type engineering class that actually was interesting to me, and learn and apply that to real world, situations and events and different problems
and get your way through, right? Because engineering school is not easy. I mean, sometimes it's easier than other times. But
some of the hardest things are like what you're not good at, right? So engineering school, there's not a whole lot of classes you have to take that revolve around like English and like writing courses and stuff, and that's what I was really terrible at.
Same.
So like those were the most difficult for me to get through, like a class where I had to read a book and talk about it, or a class where I had to like do long form writing. I'm so bad at writing.
I'm terrible at English. I have no interest in it at all.
That's why we're good at math, not English. That's why we went and became engineers, right?
Yeah.
So those were the hardest classes for me, even though some of them were just my general studies type courses. You know, like, oh, you gotta have an English class to get through. It's like I know so many people that struggled with like chemistry or biology or something, because we're mechanical people. The people that like I had classes with, at least, and so those other things that are outside of our like kind of wheelhouse get to be very difficult whenever it might be easy for someone else.
Well, it's just like I think about all the time. It's like I don't want to just learn how to be just an engineer. Like I don't want to just have that skill. I don't want to just be a pipeline engineer. I don't want to just be a this or that. Like I want to be well-rounded. I want to get into things. I want to learn about different avenues on either how to make money, or just learning a new skill, or whether it be professionally or just recreationally. It's just being a well-rounded human being, that way that when someone comes up with a conversation, I can somewhat carry myself through it,
right?
Because I've had maybe a little bit of experience in it, or I've looked into that kind of a thing, or I've watched a video over it, at some point in time prior to. It's just, it all kind of comes back together, just being a well-rounded human being and being an interesting human being, right? Because you can tell, like, when somebody is experienced, like, I had a shop teacher one time who just, you could talk to him about anything, man, and he could just go off on it. Like, that dude was so knowledgeable, humble, just a good old shop teacher, man. But some of the experiences he had whenever he was young, the places he'd gone, the things that he had seen just in his lifetime up to that point, because he was fairly old. I think he was probably in his like 70s, older dude. So he's lived some life.
Yeah.
And just is like, wow, like it's inspirational. It's like, man, like I would like to be that way whenever I'm that age.
I can really appreciate that from somebody who you talk to them, and that they have a kind of wisdom that comes only from experiences. You can't get from reading about in a book, or watching a video over, or hearing a podcast about, or just you can't even get it from talking with other people. You can kind of start to understand, but people that are experienced, they just have this certain kind of like, I guess, wisdom that they are able to derive from different situations that they've been in and experiences that they've had. It's incredible, and that's what's pushed me to want to travel more and experience other things too. And that's what pushes me also to talk to people. Try to step out of my like comfort zone. I was in the gym with the older guy sitting in the sauna, and he was talking about how like millennials, that's what he used. He's like, well, I feel like millennials don't talk anymore. It's like they just want to text. They don't want to talk. It's like, and I guess he was kind of like upset about it. And I was like, wow, I disagree with you in the sense that like millennials don't want to talk, but I think that it may not be as common. Like, I think you have a good point that it's not as common to like have those kind of conversations, but you can't
blanket
group
statement.
Everybody. Yeah, you can't
because we're not like that.
And that's what I told him. And I was like, for me, example, like I would much rather talk to you in the sauna than sit here by myself. But I do know a lot of people that will just go in there and sit there on their phone or listen to music or a podcast, which is what I normally would do if someone's not willing to talk. But that's why I push myself to get out there and talk to people more, especially people that have those experiences, because you start to understand, appreciate things they've been through, and like look forward to new things that you can, get out of life, get out of traveling, get out of just getting out in the world and seeing these other experiences and communicating with people and things and places. And that's why I'm super excited about Mexico, because that's like a whole another country, right? And then I've been to Mexico too, but it was a long time ago. I've only been once. We're staying at a resort, right? We're not like really gonna experience like what you could take from if you moved to Mexico for a year, or something like that. But I definitely want to go to like Japan, right? To China or to Thailand, those kind of places too, and start just looking around, recognizing these other very different places in the world and how their cultures interact and how they do things and appreciate people. And like I've noticed that from the school we went to versus like other places, just with how people open the doors and how people greet you and how people come out and say, hey y'all, what's up? Like,
It's
how's
a
it
different
going?
culture, different feel
Yeah, it's
to it.
different just going from Texas to like out in California where like you sit at a red light a little too long and someone's like immediately honking at you and ready to get you like moving. It's not a different kind of hospitality, it feels like.
Well, too, and we're planning on going into the city, and get out of the resort a little bit, which I think is a really cool experience. Because you can go to places like Japan, a little bit more of an extreme, going out there into the world and putting yourself out there in an uncomfortable, unfamiliar situation and environment. But that's like, I feel like that's like a big part of learning and being and growing as a human, is putting yourself in that situation where it's like, oh, I'm not in America where everybody uses the dollar, everybody speaks English, I can read all the signs, I know where I'm going relatively. It just puts you in that kind of fight or flight mode in a way of like you're taking everything in. There's just a different feel to it. It's just a different way of being alive. Because we get in our day-to-days of going to work. We're familiar with Fort Worth, Texas, America. Everything's familiar. But when you get in that unfamiliar places in the world, like it's a fun experience, man. It's a very cool, uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah. Well, we obviously like pushing our comfortability boundaries, right? We obviously like getting out there a little bit. Some people don't handle it well at all, which is like totally understandable.
I do
that's
sometimes?
something I'm excited about too. What'd you say?
The one thing I do sometimes is I'll go on Google Earth and I'll just drop myself in a random part of the world and just kind of like, how you go with the street view.
Can you do that with your headset?
Yeah, you can. Yeah,
that's cool.
There's an app where you can do that. But I'm on the computer.
Yeah, I know
I'll just drop myself down in a random spot in the world, different country, and I'll just kind of walk around a second.
Look around.
Yeah, I do that all the time.
Yeah.
I think it's so cool because it's just like, because I can't go there right now, but just a random, it could be a random neighborhood in Scandinavia, like, and I'll just drop in and just kind of look around, look at the houses, and see some people walking on the road. Or
I've never done that, but
what kind of car are they driving on the road? And there's this TikTok trend, or there's a couple people that do it, but there's one guy that's really good at it. And what he does is he's got it's like Discord or Twitch or something. He's got a stream going, and somebody will tell him to drop a location somewhere, or the person will drop a location for him, and they'll drop him in a location, and he's got a couple street views to look at, and he'll figure out where he's at, and then there's an accuracy. It's like a game he plays of like how far away he was from. So like he'll drop the person will drop in Norway. Right.
Yeah.
And then
he has no idea.
Yeah. And he'll like look around and goes, okay, the house look like that. There's a street sign that looks European.
This kind of windows
and
they
he's
have.
like, Denmark. And it'll be, a country that's real close to Norway. Maybe he didn't get Norway or something. And it's just like a game he plays, but he gets stupid close. And sometimes he'll get like right on the money where he's like a few miles away from like where he thought he was, where he said he thought he was, and where he actually was. It's just a cool game. It's really cool.
That's cool.
But he does it as like he's got a lot of followers, and that's just a thing that he does. That's the content he puts out. It's just really cool. And so anyway, I do like a more casual version, right? I just go in and look. I was in Dubai the other day. I just kind of dropped myself in Dubai, and you see all those exotic cars driving around. Everything's marble. Everything's huge. You're just in the middle of the desert. Where was I at the other day? Australia was really cool. New Zealand. I dropped myself in New Zealand, and you're just in the mountains. So you're just like looking around in the mountains. It's just like,
you're a whole other kind of traveler, Blake. I had no idea. That sounds really cool. I'm gonna have to go try that.
It's really cool. Like when I'm bored and stuff, and it just shows like, oh, there's a lot out there. It just keeps. I think that helps me keep that in my mind of like, I want to go to some of these places.
Dude, traveling for me was such a weird experience. Like whenever we went to New York and stuff, it was like, holy shit, I didn't even know there was so much out there, and I didn't even leave our country.
Yeah.
I didn't even leave our little niche, perfectly formed society where we drive around in cars and all push buttons to go up elevators. And like, we have very like general understood rules that get overlooked. That's one thing about it, Mexico, that's exciting, right? You get to bargain with people. It's so weird because you don't go into a mall here and say, oh, I want to buy these shoes that are listed for $75. You don't go up to the counter and say, hey, like, you know what? I'll give you $52 for these. And they're like, no, but like I can do 65, and you're like, no, like honestly, I'm not gonna pay more than 60. You know, you don't do that here.
You can
but there
barter
you
with
can.
the taxis too. You can
With
barter
everything,
with them. Yeah.
right? And so it's like it's such a foreign concept to me because like we're not used to it. I'm super excited about it. You know how I am with my wannabe bargaining abilities.
That's why we got to go into town.
It's like
man.
I've seen a lot of those videos where they go and they like look at like nice watches or sunglasses or purses or whatever, and they like try to like lowball them and try to really really talk them down, see what kind of good deals they can get. People do that just like as like vlogs and stuff in like Thailand, and so that's super super interesting to me.
It'll be a good time, man. Just one more thing to add to our list of activities that we do, and yeah, hopefully inspire us to go more places, more out there, like
Oh, definitely will.
different
Oh,
countries.
I'm also excited. I'm gonna take the GoPro again. Our South Carolina trip was like a little bit of a bust with the GoPro, but that was the first time I've like tried to use it to get pictures going on, and so
Yeah.
I'm still trying to learn how to like put things together. But I also learned a lot about like, oh well, like I don't have any B-roll for like downtime. I don't have any videos of like us talking. So if I want to talk in it, like, well, I'd have to record it here and add the audio and just different
Some
things
fillers.
I've learned. So like I'm gonna take GoPro again and try to get like a little bit more of like little vlog style, like, hey, this is our fun trip to Mexico. Here's some things we did. Like, I don't know. But it's just cool, exciting to me. So I'm really looking forward to everything we're gonna be able to do. Not to mention get back here. We'll do a recap on the next podcast, I'm sure, about how our trip went and everything. And
Hopefully, have plenty to talk about, but nothing too crazy.
nah, nothing crazy to happen. Surely not. Although Macy's mom was telling us some pretty frightening stories about
And things can go
some,
wonky.
yeah.
But again, we're in the resort area. They keep that place pretty locked down.
And
tight.
we have a large group. We're gonna stick together for the most part, take care of each other, make sure there's no solos out roaming around.
Yeah, we have a group of around 10 people.
Yeah,
And so like no one's gonna mess with us.
No, it's
We'll
gonna be a
good.
great time. Super excited for it. I think everybody should get out there and travel as much as they can, or just drop themselves in different locations around the world via Google Earth.
Hey man, do it. Just try it out. Get curious.
I certainly am. I'm gonna give that a shot. I know what I'm doing at work tomorrow.
There you go.
I'm traveling.
Well, it's good to be back. I think the time we took off was much needed, but we're going to get back into the swing of things and just hopefully progress as a podcast and live life and have more things to talk about as usual. There's never a shortage of things to talk about nowadays.
Stay restless.
Hell yeah.
We'll see you on the next episode.
Peace.